Last year when I was writing the book that recently came out called Motor City Barn Finds, I met a gentleman at a Cars and Coffee event outside Detroit who told us he had a bunch of foreign cars in northern Michigan. We went up there and looked at them and wow, it was pretty cool. So now we're going to bring the video series Barn Find Hunter with these video cameras to come and look at those cars in his yard way up in northern Michigan. Here's an Alfa Romeo 2000, pretty rare car, much larger than your average Alfa Romeo. It's probably only good for a parts car these days. There are nice parts on it, taillights, bumpers, but if you look at the chassis rot down in the quarter panel there, it's pretty bad. Next to it, if you can check it out, is a French car called the Citroen 2CV or Deux Chevaux. And that was a front-wheel drive two-cylinder car that was designed so that you could drive it to the market to sell your eggs at the market. And if you had those eggs in a basket on the front seat with you, you could drive across a plowed farm field and they wouldn't break. That's how compliant the suspension was. And back there is a 1956 Alfa Romeo Giulietta. It's the 34th one car like that built, and it's probably too far gone to restore, unfortunately, but we're just getting to the good stuff now. This is just a prelude of things to come. Well, here's a car that in Europe this was called a Volkswagen, marketed as a Volkswagen, but in the States it was called a Porsche. It's a 914, a mid-engine car. This one's a four-cylinder, probably a 1.8. They were amazing handling cars, especially when they had the optional six-cylinder, which was a 911-6. It was amazing. This one's got the optional alloy rims. You know, you'd really have to go in there with take everything out and see how the floor is. These cars have a bad habit of rusting very badly, but if it has solid bones, it might be worth restoring or making a vintage race car. This has been on this trailer for at least 20 years, if not longer. The owner bought it in the early 80s and it's been sitting here ever since. But now we're going to go down into a garage. David, who owns these vehicles, is going to explain what we're walking past. This is our friend David Korwin, and David has invited us here to his farm up in northern Michigan to look at some of the cars that he and his brother and ultimately his father collected over the years. We've seen some of them over in the woods there, but this is the mother lode in here. So if you're a foreign car guy, you'll really dig this. So thanks for inviting us.
Thanks, Tom.
Show us what you got.
All right. The first thing you'll see is this 1940 Dodge truck. It's a 1-ton stake. And the idea with this is that it was going to be the perfect vintage race car hauler, especially like for an old Lotus 6, because you could drive it up on the back and ramps and on the ramps and you'd be all set.
So your dad bought this?
Yeah, and we were talking about that. We think maybe in Roscommon, Michigan, but we're not sure.
And how long ago you figure you bought it?
Maybe 1976. Yeah.
76.
So more.
Yeah,
more.
40 years.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have an Alfa Coupe here.
A 1957 Giulietta Sprint. It's a car that my mom and dad went on dates in.
No kidding.
Yeah. Yeah. Way back then. So early 60s, end of 50. I think he bought this car in 59.
And
so
what year is it, do you think?
This is a 57.
Okay, so he bought it as a 2-year-old car. No kidding.
Yeah.
And this thing was like a turquoise.
That is the original color.
Isn't that
I
something?
think it would have been called Celeste Blue.
Yeah, you can see the dashboard is like
Yeah.
that. Wow, what a fabulous car this must have been. Sheesh. Yeah. Column shift.
Yep.
This car has a column
Yeah,
shift.
4-speed.
4 on the column.
4-speed on the column.
Here's the engine on the Giulietta. It's a 1957, 1600 cc's. If you could look at this, you know, this is a 1957 car being built at the same time as MGAs and Triumph TR3s, and they were so basic. The Triumphs, the MGs, and most other cars had push-rod engines, very antiquated. But this car had an overhead cam, double overhead cam engine, aluminum head. It was so much more advanced than the British contemporaries of the day. The Italians really had it together when it came to machinery. It's got a single downdraft, single barrel, but most people who had performance versions of this would have side draft Weber carburetors. two barrels. It's a flow-through head design, which means the intake is on this side and the exhaust is on this side, so gas and air would flow through the head and right out again. Much better cylinder head design than the alternative, which would be the gas and air to come in and go out on the same side. It just slows the whole momentum down. This is a car worth restoring, and especially since David, his parents dated in this car in the late 50s and early 60s, he has a real need to want to restore this again. So we have here, what is this, a GTV?
This is a GTV that my dad owned a couple of times. It's a 66, and he sold it to a young man in Ann Arbor who drove it for a couple of months before he floated it over a traffic island and took out the sump and the front end of the car. And when we walk to the front end, you can see that my dad didn't buy factory panels and repair it. Because he was a body guy, he decided to do his own take.
Oh, look at that.
On Giugiaro's theme here, and it's got NSU headlights. That's where the oval headlights came from.
So you got a custom Alfa. Holy
yeah,
mackerel.
but it is a custom Alfa. It's all done with lead. It's surviving better than the rest of the car.
And did he drive it after he fixed the front
Oh,
end?
quite a bit.
Yeah.
After this guy crashed it, my dad bought it back from him. The guy gave him a bunch of money, and my dad gave him in return his ISO Revolta as a trade, and got this back and then did the work on it.
Interesting.
So then they drove it for years. My brother and I used to hear him coming home from the shop, and we'd hear him downshifting the block over from us, and it was just, there comes Dad. And it was just wonderful to listen to.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
Wow. And then another, is this a 2000?
This is a 2000 as well. This is a 1960, and this one is in pretty decent shape as far as a restoration project.
Mm-hmm.
And we have all the pieces plus parts car, obviously. And this is bodied by Touring. This is a coach-built car. The body looks similar to some of the Maseratis of the time because Touring had their designs, their favorite look.
Mm-hmm.
And it does look similar to that. The 2600 was a bigger car than this and had a little less detail as far as trim was concerned, but this was a luxurious car for the time.
You got a nice Alfa logo in the back. Is this the car that the other one in the woods is that's a parts car for this?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Correct.
It's been here a while.
It has been. There's a roosting area up there.
So,
and
is your intention to restore this?
This one will be a restoration.
Yeah.
Yeah. This one is.
Now, is there anything in here? Are you interested in selling anything here?
We've talked about whether or not we would. I'm not old enough to decide to sell off the projects yet. At this point, I still think there's time to restore things. But.
Yep. Well, we're leaving a great stash of Alfa Romeos in a barn and in the woods around here. And we're driving about, 50 miles north of here in Michigan because we've heard about a guy named Denny who has been collecting too many cars for too long, has decided, I got to start getting rid of these things because I can't finish them all in my lifetime. So that sounds pretty appealing to me. So we're going to go check that out. Come on with us.